You say, how are you doing it? Well, first we have to get the background right. You know, is the background we're getting portrayed there correct, or is there artistic enhancement going on? And if it's artistic enhancement, what's the reason for it? And if there's artistic enhancement, where do you start to separate it out? And I thought that we were talking about the Word of God here. Is God involved in artistic enhancement? And if there isn't, I mean, you have all sorts of things that you have to weigh. I can't preach to you on this. All I can, I mean, I have a clear view on what I see it as, but I don't feel you should adopt my particular view. What you should do is hear the view, hear the traditional view that you're used to, most of you. Read your own documents, and again, weigh the evidence and decide your own view. You know, you're the person who's going to live longer than me. You'll be around long after I'm gone, so even if I'm a disturbing voice, I won't be around to disturb you 30 or 40 years from now. So you'll be free and you can make your own decisions anyway. So, in school, one tries to take a objective view of evidence. Hopefully that's what school's teaching people. And you don't want to be like people on some streets who start chopping priests' heads off in northern Iraq. Christian communities I read are losing their ministers and priests because the Pope said something in Rome that upset some people in the Middle East, so they go and kill people there, you know, because they don't like what the Pope said or something like that. You don't want to be like that kind of reaction. So we don't consider that 20th century, 21st century civilization or sophistication. We want to be as high-minded as we can. Okay, so here, Archelaus is now the king. We read how a little bit, I think I told you one or two, how, hey, you're strong here. See if you can pull the top off that thing, will you? Thanks a lot. How the people wanted Herod to die. They were joyous that he was going to die, and then he didn't die, right when they thought he was going to die. So Herod is a very dominant person, and Josephus' Jewish War spends probably 2/3 of its introductory chapters on him, his rise to power, who he kills. I mean, he kills endless numbers of people. He is really a Saddam Hussein, you know, prototype, if you want to call it that. Mixed with the Saudi royal family in the sense of the number of wives and children he spawns. So in fact, it's a mixture of that, what we see in the Middle East, even up to the present day, to some extent. Herod is in power in some way or another from the 50s to 4 BC. In the 50s, he's only governor of Galilee, but Josephus traced his career there, putting down unrest in Galilee and executing what he calls bandit chiefs, and then opposing the Sanhedrin, dismissing it, killing all the members of the Sanhedrin who opposed him, ultimately coming back to Palestine in around, I think it's 37 BC, with a Roman army given to him by Mark Antony. While Mark Antony was fighting with Octavius for control of the Roman Empire. I don't know if you have your dates here, but Julius Caesar was assassinated in 44 BC. Then Mark Antony and Octavius, Caesar's nephew, fought for control of things. Antony in the east, Octavius in the west, and finally it was the battle, I think, of Actium around 32 BC or something like that, that determined the fate of Mark Antony. But Herod already had an army that was given to him in Rome to come back and reestablish himself in Palestine, because in the meantime the Persians had made incursions into Palestine, the traditional enemies of the Romans. And the Romans wanted to mop up the situation there, so they gave Herod an army, and with the army he stormed Jerusalem. in 37 BC. You see, this is a really chaotic situation here. Very full of turmoil. Native rule versus foreign rule, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can't get the picture without your Josephus book, I'm afraid. And even there, you have to read through Josephus. So he really takes over in 37 BC. And then Josephus makes it clear that he visited vengeance on anyone who opposed him. They were taken either openly or in secret to these fortresses, like where John the Baptist was executed, Macaros, or other fortresses out in the desert that he had, and tortured and killed. Just like in the Middle East these days. Anyone. And Josephus even says that Herod disguised himself as a citizen, used to walk around the streets listening to what people said about him, so they could later put his secret police on people. He destroyed the whole Maccabean family, the previous Jewish nationalist priestly family that had led the revolt that the Jews celebrate for Hanukkah. Jews don't even know this history. They think Herod was one of their kings. They have so little knowledge of their own history that they think, they don't read Josephus any more than other people do. They read the rabbinic materials, and the rabbinic materials are so confused historically. You would go into a spin if you tried to follow them. There's no historical line or narrative because they're written in the East in places like Iraq and Jerusalem by people who are not interested in history. They're people interested in legal debating and things like that, making legal points on each other, what the Jews call pilpul. So you're not going to get any narrative out of the Talmudic materials. If you have any knowledge whatsoever, it just seeps through occasionally. So they don't know. For instance, if you say, oh yeah, Herod the Jewish king, yeah, he was one of our kings. No, he wasn't a Jewish king at all. But they don't know that. They have no idea. So the Christian idea that Herod was the Jewish king and wanted to kill Christ and so on feeds into this ideology that the Jews are constantly making all these troubles. And the Jews accept that because they don't have the information to withstand it. If it were true, fair enough, but it isn't even true. Herod usurped the Jewish kingship with Roman help, and he was a Greco-Arab whose father was a Greek priest in Ashkelon, and whose mother was an Arab upper-class noble from Petra. So he is in no way Jewish nationally or any other way. And in the difficulties Romans had with the Maccabeans, his father Antipater managed to